Hi, welcome to Naima Creates. I'm Naima, and today I'm going to be creating this mermaid in watercolor. I'm doing mermaid in honor of Mermaid. There's a lot of art challenges around, and Mermaid is one of them. Essentially, the point of it is to draw a different mermaid every single day in May. Now, I personally am not going to be doing that just because mermaids aren't super my thing. I know the idea of it is just to get you to draw regularly. But I thought I would at least take part by drawing this one, and we'll see, maybe I'll do another one down the line. So I decided to just, take it simple, take it easy. I haven't done a mermaid before, so just have her perched on a rock in a fairly usual pose, I think, how I would imagine a mermaid to be, other than maybe just coming out of the water. And I used a reference photo for this, which I found very helpful because if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll know that I don't really draw people that often. I'm definitely trying to draw more humans in the future and going forward. So I used a reference photo, which I think is something that's very helpful for any artist to do, since it allows you to have a more realistic representation of what it is that you're drawing. You don't want to end up with something that you're just thinking of it in your head, but it's not, the proportions are not quite right. So I definitely just went online, just Googled, woman leaning back, woman sitting back, something to that effect, so I could get an idea of the shape of how her torso would be. I did draw a line in the center of the page just so I knew exactly where I wanted to place her. I had actually done a couple sketches beforehand on this sheet of paper and had to erase them because I realized that I was leaning too far to the right and there wasn't room for a tail or something along those lines, or it wasn't big enough. So having that line down the middle was super helpful. As you can see, I was struggling a bit with the boob here. Initially, actually, I think what I had in the first place was probably best, but still fine. I'm not really looking at female chests that often, so I'm not sure how to draw it. But anyways, we'll see as we go forward from here. Maybe I will. Maybe that'll be my art goal for the year, is drawing more bodies. So I wanted to have a little bit of a story going on in this painting. So in the background, I just drew a small ship with a couple men on the edge there. Well, people, you can't quite see anything about them because they're just little stick figures. But as we know, they always tend to be lured in by sirens and mermaids. So I have them there just to have a little bit more interest to the piece. I created my horizon line in the background, just a straight line going across. I didn't want to make it right across her neck, so I brought it a little bit further down because it kind of just chops her body if you do it like that. So it's better to be somewhere in that shoulder blade range. That'd be the best place. So to start off with, I just wanted to do a quick little wash of the sky in the background. Sometimes, honestly, the best thing to do is just to start, just to get something on the paper. Even as you saw when I started off my drawing, it wasn't quite regular human shapes to begin with. It was kind of triangular and circles and just scribbles and, but once you get it down there, that's what really helps to get you going. I think a lot of times for artists or people who maybe don't consider themselves artists but just like doing art, you tend to question yourself or feel like it needs to be perfect, and so then you don't end up really getting anything done. So, and that goes for me too, as you can see based on the date of this video compared to the date of my previous video. But yeah, so it's super helpful just to get going, just get in there, draw something. That is one thing I guess that's nice about these art challenges, is it really helps you to just dive back in and have something to go off of, right? Instead of pulling it from your head. So for the sky, I had used intense blue, just watered it down, and I'm using the Winsor and Newton paints. Yeah, so I just put that in the sky. If you do look at photos of the sky, or if you just can go outside, I don't know what time it is for you right now, but you'll see that the sky is lighter on the horizon and darker the closer it comes to you. I'm sure there's some good science behind that, but this is not the video to explain that. But it's really helpful when you do paint it like that as well, adding a darker or more color towards the very top of your page, and then making it lighter as it goes down to the horizon. So then I've just taken the Viridian Hue. Viridian Hue, it's nice because it already has a little bit of that bluish tint to it. And I did add a little bit more blue just so it wasn't that pure straight color. But as you can see here, like, isn't that just the Little Mermaid? Come on, that's a perfect color. That being said, I did want to have a bit more texture going on with her tail. I wanted it to have the scales and some different shades and colors going on, so I added in some more texture. As you can see here, I'm just dabbing in the color to give it a little bit of speckles. For your painting, if you want to just keep it that flat wash, that's completely perfect. That's completely beautiful, because even watching it back in this video, I love how that looks just with the color without anything else added in. So but I just wanted to be a little experimental. And as you can see here, I'm continuing my experimental phase with using salt. So when you add salt to watercolor, it creates this interesting texture where some of the color gets drawn towards the salt while others it gets almost pushed away. I don't really know how to describe it. I did go a little salt crazy though, so at the end of it all, there's still salt stuck to my paper right now. But I kind of liked that. I liked that idea of her just hopping out the water, and as she's sitting on this rock, the pebbles or the dirtiness around her is just kind of sticking to her wet skin or the scales, wherever she's been. Yeah, I don't know. I like that. So while I was letting that dry, you do need to take time to let the salt dry. And I have cut out the parts where I've just been waiting for paint to dry, of course. I don't think you want to watch that. So that's why I jumped back up to the sky, deepened that up a little bit at the top, and then I made a little bit of a purple color for her hair. We're definitely going to go back into the hair later on to add more texture. But I just wanted to get, once again, like I said, just get something down, some color down. It also helps so when you're creating the rest of your piece, you're not, you don't feel distracted, or you don't feel that you aren't getting far. Just get something down there. It's art. It's just paint. It's all good. So I took a blue color. I believe it was still the intense blue. And I added in a little bit of some scale kind of shapes there. Try not to get too much water in it at this point when you're layering on top, just because I really wanted that color to show. So I would recommend just be aware of that. The very first scale that I put down, there was too much water on my brush. All I had to do though was simply just take a paper towel, dab up the color, and then dab off my brush on my paper towel as well. So as you can see, I mean, look at how the paint is on the palette. It's not super wet, it's not flowing a lot. It's just a little bit, so I can just add touches in here and there and be very precise with it. So now I decided to go ahead and start on the water. Now this is after the mermaid's tail has dried, because anything that's right beside it, you don't want to have your paint touching wet paint that's right beside it, because that will all spread together. You can do that depending on the look that you're going for, the technique and what it is. Definitely for a lot of florals, that can be great. In this scenario, that's not what we're going for. So make sure everything is completely dry. Give it time. You can touch it with your hand. You can dry it with a blow dryer if you want to. Whatever you got to do, just to make sure it doesn't spread. So now I'm just doing a wet on wet technique here, just taking my clean water, wetting the page, and then taking the paint, dropping it in there. You can see how smooth the wash is on the left. And even as I'm saying that, on the right, I don't know what quite happened. I think somehow the water that I put down dried before I got a chance to go into it properly with the color. I don't really know exactly what happened, but at some point it got a little bit streaky. But, I went back over it afterwards and worked it all out, so it wasn't too bad. You can see I'm adding more water in here, and then when I go back in with the color, it's different. The best thing though about watercolor is that when you add more water, add more color, you can pretty much even everything back out. So you don't really have to worry too much. It's not like, when you're working with acrylic, then you just have to keep layering and layering and making it thicker and thicker and basically just painting over everything that you've already done. this is a bit more additive. In this way, you can see I'm just adding another transparent layer over top, smoothing things out, and I've done that a bunch of times throughout this piece. And even with oil too, when you put something down, it's wet, so you're kind of, you're stuck with that wet paint. So this, I think, well, every medium has its different advantages, its pluses and minuses, absolutely. After I finished that section of the wash, I just went back over to the other side where I noticed that it was a little bit, the color wasn't quite right, and added some more of that in. Now, of course, with water, it's not going to be this flat color, so I do add a bit more to it afterwards, to the waves, but honestly, I just really didn't want it to be the focus of the piece. I didn't really want to spend all my time focusing on the water when I wanted to spend more of my time focusing on the mermaid, because she's the main focus of this picture. So I do add some texture to the water and some waves and things like that, and I will let you know certain areas that you can definitely add more later on, but not now. So sadly, my camera turned off or something. I don't really know what happened as I was doing her skin, so I didn't get to show you all of the shading that I did here, but I'm pretty much doing it on her face, just taking, did a wash over everything in the brown. Then I'm taking more of the brown with a bit less water and going back over the areas that there should be shade on someone's body, just to give her a bit more dimension. So, you have to imagine where you think the light source is coming from. So in my head, she's kind of looking up towards the sun, and it's coming off of the right side of our screen here, I guess over to her left, a bit in the front. So it's on the other opposite side of her body, of course, that's going to be a little bit in shadow. So we have that going on. Same with her face, and the shadow casting across her neck. It's nice to add a little bit of that clavicle bone there. Don't forget that. And then on the face itself, I added a bit of the shading right underneath where the eyebrow is. Her eyes are closed, so I have a little bit of it under her eyelashes. And we're going to go back in shortly to get those details down. Once again, really helpful to work from a reference photo. I didn't work from a reference photo for this shading, but I would recommend it. I think it's a great idea. I added a touch of pink to her lips, and then took that color with a bit more yellow. I believe I used the cadmium yellow to make the starfish for her chest. Took a bit more of the brown, wanted to add a bit more of that just around the tail to sort of cement those two pieces together, being her torso and the tail, because they looked a little bit disjointed. And then I realized that I forgot to add the water down there, so just tapped a little bit of that in, and all good to go. No stress, no fuss. So now I wanted to make a gray color for the rock. With your colors, that whole color theory, there's so many videos about it online already if you want to know a bit more about the color theory, but I just wanted to make a black-ish type color. There isn't a black in this watercolor set, and honestly, in this scenario especially, I wouldn't recommend using black. I've used black before while working with watercolor, and it just ended up making it just stood out a lot compared to the rest of the colors because it's so opaque. So I just took my intense blue and cadmium red. It looks very orange. So when you have the orange, which is basically red and yellow, mixed with the blue, neutralizes it out. Now we have this nice deep dark color here. Intense blue is also very deep, so it helped. For her hair, all you have to really do is just do small little zigzags with your brush, back and forth, going all the way up to the top, and then go back over it in layers. With watercolor, you can layer up. That creates more depth, of course. So you'll see that I'll go back over it again here. I did a few different layers, so it adds a little bit more shadow and shading going on. We still have a little bit of that purple poking through, but not too much. And then I went back over at the ends because, of course, if we're just doing zigzags, it'll be very flat, right? So I added a little more as if it's a little bit of a curl coming down off the ends of it, just to give it a bit more of a natural look. And honestly, I'm so happy with how the hair turned out. I thought it just looked really real, so full of dimension. Once again, the layers helped. It also made it look a bit more like there was a lot of shadows going on. When you're doing the eyebrows, if you've done makeup before, you know that it's thicker towards the middle, and then partway through It gets thin, tapers off to the side. Use just very slow, small brush strokes when you're working with very tiny areas that have a lot of detailing. Likewise with the lips, I just went back over it with a purple color to deepen them up, and then add the lines around the Cupid's bow and just let that pop a bit more. I took that same color to use for the rock here, watered it down a bit, and first just wanted to do a wash just right over the entire thing. Like I said before, that's just easy, just get the color down, right? So it's down, it's there. Then I went back in with that same color, brought it under where I thought the shadows were. And because, I don't know if you saw that there, I had to take a little piece of paper towel to just dab up some of the paint because it had spread into the tail, because there's still salt right on her tail, like I had mentioned earlier. And the salt just kind of picked it up and started whooshing it in. And I was like, no, I don't want it to be gray there. But the paper towel took a lot of that up. So anyhow, went back in, like I said, continued adding the gray where I thought her shadow would be. I did use paper towel just to try to make it a little bit lighter right where the rock was, like just above where the rock touched the water, almost to imply that it was maybe a little shinier there, or worn, the color was worn out by the waves over time, this salt water, something along those lines. I felt like it should just be a bit lighter there. Then I took my flat brush and went ahead and drew my lines around to have the waves closer up and around an object. The waves, of course, will be a bit shorter, a bit choppier. In the distance, the waves will be longer, more flowing. If you look at water, you can see that it should look like that. I mean, I personally am not on the water often, so once again, kind of going by memory here. Reference photos, definitely important. So, you know, if you are a sailor, if you are someone who's at the beach a lot and you feel like it looks off, well, please forgive me. So as you can see, the water and the sky are two different colors. A lot of watercolorists like to try to stick with the same shades. So if you're using intense blue, just keep using intense blue. You know, don't switch around as much. I did add a bit more of that color in the background, because as we know, water is not all one shade. So I added a bit more of that intense blue just in the background to imply some depth in the water. I added a bit of the Viridian hue, which is the same color as the tail, just underneath the tail to imply a little bit of reflection going on there, just lightly. And then I made the neutral shade, but I added, made sure it was a little bit more on the warm tone for the shadow and reflection of her body on the water. I didn't want the ship body to be too brown though, so I toned that down to make it a little bit more gray, just because I want her to be the only warm shade here and to really just pop. So I made my sailboats, used my reference photo to add in the, what's it called? The sails, of course. And then I remembered that I wanted to add rocks back in here because her arm was looking a little bit awkward. So I just used that same gray shade, went back over top, added a few rocks. If you add just one rock, it would look kind of awkward. So I made sure there was a few scattered around in different areas to bring unity to the piece so it wouldn't look so out of the place and random. I also toned down a bit of the shadow that I had going on in the background of the rock there just behind her, because I thought it was too harsh and didn't really seem quite right. So here is the final piece. This was taken with my Google Pixel, so you can see the color is way better. I might try filming like this in the future. Anyways, I hope you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. Please give it a like, comment down below what you want to see next, and please subscribe. Have a really awesome day. Thank you. Bye.